The way home, the way home, the way home. We are 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 home. Well, good morning, everyone, and I wanted to share with you how grateful I am to have Charlie Thweet with us here today. And he and Heather are here on a little journey across the country, and we're excited for them to move into new adventures in life. And Charlie contacted me and said, you know, I'm going to be passing through. Would you be interested in having me come and share some music? And I, of course, said absolutely. And so I wanted to share with you not only a little bit about that, but it's been Charlie and I, whether he knows it or not, have been on an amazing and wonderful journey together for many years. Charlie, when I first came into Unity, I remember having the experience of hearing Charlie Thweet, and actually I think it was Michael Stillwater and a number of people played up at Unity Village together, and I think it was Om Shanti. You were all playing at different points and times, and his music has had a very powerful impact on me as I first came into Unity. And I had an opportunity some years after meeting Charlie and hearing him and you know, really connecting with his music, and actually having a few opportunities to connect with him personally. And I remember having an opportunity to take a trip early on, after I'd been in ministry for a little while, with a group of people from Unity around the world, actually. And it was headed up by Glenn Mosley. And we were going to the Soviet Union. And this is about the time, it was about a month before the communists tried to take back over the White House. Basically, the Soviet Union had begun to fall apart. And there was a group of people who were trying to take back over the Russian White House, not the U.S. White House, but what's known as the Russian White House. And some of you may remember this history, and you know, there was a lot going on right around that time. So we were there about a month before that, and there was a lot of things going on in the former Soviet Union at that time. And many of them were really opening things up and wanted to really open things up. And I remember being there, and they were walking through one of the parks, and they had people that were standing up on soapboxes. They really still did that at that time. People were standing up on soapboxes in the park, and they were, you know, giving their message. And in one corner, we heard one group of people that wanted to move and become a democracy, and wanted to move forward with, you know, democracy and freedom. And then there was another corner over here that said, no, we need to move back to back when we were in the Soviet Union. We had lines, but at least we had something going, and we need to go back and reform the Soviet Union. And then there was another group over here that wanted to bring back the Tsar and wanted to bring back Tsarist rule. And it was just an amazing time. And we went there for the purpose of sharing these Unity principles, because at that time there was an awakening that was happening in the country of Russia at the time. And one of the primary messages that we had for ourselves was a song that Charlie Thweet wrote and that we had heard, and it goes, and we're going to sing it later actually, and it goes like this: peace I find on every corner, peace I find on every corner, every bus stop, every home I visit in, because I look for it. Peace I find on every corner, every bus stop, every corner, because I look for it. And we're going to have an opportunity to sing that later, but I wanted to talk a little bit about that. This week, the question kept coming to me in different ways. What is happiness? what is happiness? And how do we find happiness? You know, in this country, one of the principles that our Constitution is based upon is the pursuit of happiness. And I've been kind of meditating and reflecting on that this week, and I came across a story. There was a young couple who moved into a neighborhood, and the next morning while they were eating breakfast, the young man sees a neighbor hanging out the wash outside, and she looks out and she says, boy, the laundry is just not very clean. She doesn't know how to wash correctly, and maybe she needs new laundry soap. So her husband looked on but remained silent. And every time her neighbor would hang out the wash to dry, she'd look out and say, I can't believe that, you know, she's hanging out this dirty laundry all the time. I just can't believe it. It's the same thing. Well, about a month later, one was surprised and woke up and looked out the window and saw that the wash on the line was totally clean. It was just absolutely wonderful. She says, man, look, she's learned how to wash her clothes correctly. I wonder who taught her this. The husband just kind of smiled a little bit and grinned and said, well, I got up early this morning and cleaned the windows. But oftentimes, what we see is not what really is, but what we see is through the filter of our own windows, isn't it? I'm going to say it oftentimes. I think that's the reality. That is the truth of what we see and what we experience. There was a comic strip I came across. It says, Rose says to an angel, I don't believe you're 7 billion years old. If you had that much experience, you'd be doing a better job of making me happy. And the angel kind of shook his head, well, maybe working with people just makes me feel like I'm 7 billion years old. And then I came across this wonderful Oscar Wilde quote. He says, some cause happiness wherever they go, and others whenever they go. So this week I was doing some reflecting and meditating, and I was reminded of a story. And the story was probably one of the first stories that I heard when I came into Unity many years ago, and it still has a very powerful impact on me. And the story is about a king and a kingdom. And the king decided one day he wanted to take a walk around and take a look at his kingdom. He wanted to see what was going on. And so he was walking around, and everywhere he went, he was walking, and there were rocks and shells and sharp things and things that, you know, and as he walked along, it hurt his feet. And he was just, you know, he was incensed about this. You know, everywhere he went, everything was hurting his feet. So he goes back to his palace and he calls all of his advisors together and he says, look, I want my entire kingdom covered in cowhide. And over in the corner of the court, jester's over there, and he's just laughing. The king just is furious. He says, brings him from front, has the guards bring him in front of him and has him nailed down. He says, what do you mean laughing like that when I make a decree? And the jester said, well, Your Highness, why do you want to cover the kingdom with cowhide? Well, I was out walking my kingdom, and everywhere I walked, there were rocks and there were shells and things that hurt my feet. And the jester said, well, why don't you just simply cut out some cowhide and put it on your feet? You know, we go through life, whether we realize it or not, whether we think we are or not, but we go through life a lot trying to cover our kingdom with cowhide, trying to make the world fit for us, trying to make everything easy and trying to cover over the things that bother us and cover over the hurts and the wounds that we experience in life. When our real work is to really look at how we can do what we need to do with ourselves and for ourselves, not only to try and make the world a peaceful place, but come from a place of peace. Come from a place within us where we are not necessarily allowing ourselves to be hurt or wounded or injured or upset, of learning how to move into a place where we are open and receptive to knowing that whatever is showing up in our life, in some way, whether it is there and it's a rock that we step on, that it's there to teach us maybe not to step on that place, or maybe to take a different path, or perhaps to simply put some shoes on our feet and to take care of what's going on for us. Confucius once said that the demands that good people make are on themselves. The demands that bad people make are on others. So I want to talk a little bit today, and I want to do an exploration today, and I'm going to ask you the question, what makes you happy? What makes you happy? I have to ask myself that question, what makes me happy? But I'm asking you to think about that. What makes you happy? And what was your immediate thought when you had an idea of what makes you happy? Grandbaby. Being loved.
Baby smile.
Baby smile, yeah. Chocolate, someone said. A dog, yeah. Yeah. I decide. Yeah.
Being of service.
Being of service.
Course in Miracles.
A Course in Miracles. Awesome. Well, I'm going to suggest something to you, and you can take it for whatever, whether it really rings true for you or not. But what I'm going to suggest to you is that those are also the things that make you unhappy. That the things that we think make us happy are the very things that make us unhappy. And the reason why they make us unhappy is because we have an idea of how they're supposed to be. And when we have a very clear idea of how things are supposed to be and they don't show up that way, guess what? We've made a choice. We made a choice, and the choice was, I will be happy when it is this way. So ask yourself the question, what choice have you made of when you will be happy? What are the choices that you're making consistently? Because it's an ongoing thing, and it's most of the time we don't even know that we're making it. Most of the time it's totally unaware. We're unaware that we're making a decision and a choice to either choose to be in that place where we experience and feel and know happiness. Because see, the reality is happiness is not something that we have to create. It's not something that we have to get in order to, it's not something we have to have. It is something that we actually step into because it is an aspect of our true being. We are created, I believe, not only to be happy, but our happiness is our being. That is a natural state of who and what we are. But we've made a decision that things have to line up in certain ways for that to be the case, for us to be able to know that and experience that. And so many times we are experiencing life and going through life with an energy that is either trying to acquire or to grasp onto something, to draw something to us in order to experience the feeling of being happy, or we're doing the other thing, which is we're trying to avoid something so that, we can experience that feeling of being happy. But a big, huge piece of our awakening and our work is to really pay attention when we're doing that. Because in the very act of trying to get something to be happy, and in the very act of trying to push something away so that we can be happy, we are participating in the very activity that makes us unhappy. Aren't we? And so a part of waking up, learning and growing, and I'm talking for Tony. I tell everybody these are my lessons and you guys get to share it. These are what I'm trying to really accept and move into for myself, is that we all do have needs. One of the needs that we have is to be happy. I am absolutely convinced of that we have a basic underlying need to experience happiness. And it is a basic underlying need because we have accepted and adopted a mindset that says that we have to have or we have to not have in order to experience happiness. Does that make sense? And so part of the practice, I think, is learning to one, notice when we're doing that, and then shifting our awareness and our energy to an understanding that none of these things that we think we have to be happy are necessarily going to create that for us. Now, don't get me wrong, they can help to foster an awareness or a memory or an experience that we have had in some way where we've had that experience of happiness. But on some level, we have made a decision or a choice to be in that place, to be in that energy, to be in that consciousness. Abraham calls it simply well-being. I relate that as happiness. But the needs that we have strategies to get needs met, don't we? Anybody got a strategy to get your needs met? One of those strategies is service. That's a very powerful strategy for getting needs met, believe it or not. It's one of the ways that we allow our happiness to come forth, actually. But we also have strategies for getting our needs met that Marshall Rosenberg calls catastrophic strategies. And so let's talk a little bit and explore a little bit some of our catastrophic strategies. You'll recognize some of these. I know we all have them. I've got them. I've used them probably a number of times, even this last week, I'm sure. Anger is a strategy, isn't it? We use anger to try and get our needs met. That's the only reason we ever have anger. And the reality is, there's nothing wrong with that. It just is not functional. It doesn't really do what we want it to do. It really doesn't move us into the place that we want to be. But when we're in that place, if we get angry or upset or feel guilty about feeling angry, that's another strategy that we use to try and move out of that feeling of anger, and that doesn't work either, right? And so we use anger as a strategy to try and experience happiness. Well, it's valuable to understand that whenever we're experiencing anger, that's what we're doing. And the more we can awaken to that understanding that we're really simply trying to connect with that place within us where we experience that, it can help us to make shifts. Sometimes it's not an easy task, but we can make those shifts and go, oh, okay, so what I'm really wanting is to experience that place in me where I know my true being, where I really want to experience happiness. And I'm trying, and this is, Louise Hay says, the only reason why we ever get angry with anyone is because they're not being the way that we want them to be. It's true, isn't it? Anybody know anybody that's not being the way you want them to be? And we have an addiction. I'm going to call it that. It's a pretty strong term, but it feels very much like an addiction. We have an addiction to having people be the way we want them to be, don't we? And I have an addiction to, I realize I have an addiction to having people not be that way. But I'm willing to let that go because I know it's just a strategy. It's an unconscious way that we try to get needs met. And the more I can recognize that, even in the midst of it, then it doesn't affect and it doesn't change how I show up with those others in my life. Now, I have not mastered that, I'll be honest with you. It is a part of my ongoing process. But it is something that I think is so valuable and so worthwhile. I think, in fact, it's essential for us to really experience the peace on earth that we talk about in unity, that we sing about every Sunday. Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Being the change we wish to see in the world. Being the peace that we wish to see in the world. Well, what about even being the happiness that we wish to see in the world? Oh, I have to be honest, I just got a wonderful reflection of happiness. Look at this beautiful serenity here. This lovely child knows happiness. She knows sadness as well. She knows upset. She knows frustration. And she's a beautiful light. And she's sharing that, even in the midst of the anger, the frustration, and the happiness, because as A Course in Miracles tells us. There's either love or a cry for love. And we're all participating in that. We think it's just the babies that cry when they want to be fed. No, I got news for you, it's not. We think it's just the babies that cry whenever we want to, whenever they want something that they're not experiencing it. We all do that. We have ways of doing that. So anger is a strategy. Judgment is another strategy we have. Judgment is a strategy that we use to try and make ourselves feel better, isn't it? We judge other people so that we can feel better. We try to make people wrong so that we can be right. And we have an addiction to that. Come on, admit it. I need to be right. It's, as my friend Gary Simmons says, it's just a hairball, spit it up. We have this addiction to being right. It's a human condition. I don't know why. I haven't really figured that part out. It hasn't been revealed to me why we feel we have to have this experience of being right. But my suspicion is because on some level we think we're not. And not only do we think that we're not right, but because we're not right, that must mean that we're not good enough, worthwhile, important, significant, valued. Put whatever label you want. You know what we're talking about here. We all can feel that. How does it feel to feel not right? And we are so fearful of being, quote, wrong, that we have this, and the reason why we're fearful of being wrong is because we have on this unconscious level this idea, this energy, this belief system that says not just that I'm wrong, not just that we've made a mistake or that we are not correct about something, but that we ourselves are something that is wrong. There's been a label that we've accepted, a judgment that we've taken on, something within us that really still feels on some level a sense or a feeling of unworthiness. It's not the truth, but no matter how much I stand up here and say that, or even for that matter, no matter how much I tell someone how wonderful or beautiful or valuable you are, unless you are willing to do some energy work or some consciousness work or some shifting work or some practicing of moving that energy beyond and letting it heal, there's still this underlying, and Louise Hay calls it one of our core dysfunctional beliefs. It's really at the heart and the core of our experiences of discomfort, of pain, of problems, of challenges, of dis-ease in our lives. Criticism is another form of judgment. It's basically more of the same thing, another strategy. Complaining is another strategy we use. We think that if we complain enough, then everything out in the world will be covered with cowhide, right? The more we complain, the more we're going to get to have these wonderful, soft little places where we can be happy. And nothing will ever hurt our feet. And if we complain about them, it, that, everything else, that somehow everything is going to work out just the way we want it to. How's that working for you? How's that working for you? Will Bowen, in his wonderful work, The Complaint-Free World, points out very clearly that the very energy of complaining in and of itself is drawing to us more experiences for us to complain about. Actually, that's one of the mechanisms and the purposes of the energy of complaining. Our ego needs to complain about something so that it'll have something else to complain about. Our ego needs to complain about something in order to try and make it the way we think it's supposed to be so that we can feel happy. Right? And that works for a little while, right? There's a little temporary kind of gratification whenever we complain about something and something changes. Mark Twain says, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still, The reality is that no matter how much we complain about something, we are not really making a change. In fact, we are actually creating more of the same energy that drew to us that very thing that we are complaining about. And so part of our shifting out of, it's a strategy that we have learned and used, that this is how we get what we need. And we get it from very young age, from very young, that if we complain, then something happens. But we have to elevate ourselves to a place where we recognize the difference between a complaint and a request, between a demand and a request. Marshall Rosenberg also talks about the difference between a demand and a request. How do you know whether you're making a demand or not? You'll know when you get a no. If it's a demand, the no will be something that will trigger you into more forceful demands. A request is something that you would prefer, something that you want, something that you'd like to have, but there's not that attachment to it, and there's not that belief system that says underneath on our unconscious level that I have to have this in order for me to be happy. Make sense? Yeah. So complaining, controlling, you guys know a lot of these, grasping, avoiding, we talked about that. So our strategies for happiness are oftentimes the very things that are creating our unhappiness. The ways that we're trying to be happy are also the paths to our unhappiness. Not always. There are strategies that actually do help us to experience more of our well-being, aren't there? Can you think of a few? Tell me a strategy that you think is a way that we can actually experience more of our happiness and well-being. Smiling. Excellent. Singing. Meditating. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry? Dancing. Yeah. Creating. I can see peace instead of this. That's one of my favorites. Someone else?
Expressing gratitude.
Expressing gratitude. Awesome, yeah. So one of the most valuable gifts and tools that you and I have, if we choose to accept it, that's the mission impossible. It's not impossible, it's real possible. If we choose to accept our mission, Charlie shared it with us this morning, our light is our function. It's our only function. Being light, sharing light, but even more than that, seeing light. Well, I'm not sure it's more than that, because in reality, it's the same thing. The moment I see light in you, I'm sharing light. The moment you see light in me, you're sharing light. We are the light of the world. It is the truth of who and what we are. It is our being. It is our very nature. And our practice, our way of truly experiencing more of that light is becoming conscious of when and where and how we are sharing that with each other and what we're doing with it and what we can do with it in such a way that we are noticing when we are sharing light and when we are noticing that when we are trying to get light. See, there's a difference. Trying to get light doesn't work real well. You notice that? Trying to get others to be the way we think we're supposed to be so that we can experience our well-being, our goodness, our happiness is reverse order. Mahatma Gandhi said, happiness is when what you think and what you say and what you do are in harmony. When what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. Charlie is traveling light these days so that she can make room for other things. And so one of the things he asked me to ask is there someone who has a guitar that he could use for his concert today? And I just happen to have one, which is great. But it needed some strings. It needed some new strings. So I said, well, I'll put on some new strings for you. And I was in there and I was tuning it up. And I'm thinking, this is tuning a guitar is such a great metaphor for what we really need to be doing and are valuable for us in our lives. And that is tuning our instrument. Tuning up tuning in alignment. You know, there are certain vibrations that each string has. And if they're not in alignment with those vibrations and those energies, you know, you can make wonderful sounds, but they're not necessarily harmonious music. Isn't that right? So I spent some time tuning it up, and, you know, I just was listening, you know, and I have a little instrument that helps with the tuning and everything. And so part of what we're here to do is to tune our instrument, to tune ourselves to the energy that is the very energy and expression of happiness. And one of the most valuable things we can do in that is to tune into a particular energy. And the energy that really allows us to move into an experience of happiness more than any other is the energy of acceptance. It's one of the most valuable strategies that we have for happiness. When something shows up in our life, maybe it rubs up against us, maybe it's feels a little inharmonious, maybe it's not the energy or the vibration that we want it to be. Maybe that person is not acting the way that we think that they should. Maybe we're not acting ourselves in alignment with who and what we think we ought to be. If we can step back into an energy of acceptance of that, right in the moment where it is, and go, oh, this is what I'm experiencing now. Or this is what they're experiencing now. And it is what it is. And then from there, you actually have the power to make a choice. If you're automatically, unconsciously rejecting it, you don't really have the power to make a choice at that point. It's no longer a choice, it's actually a reaction. It's coming from a memory of a past. It's coming from something that you set up in your consciousness that says, this is the way things have to be in order for me to be happy. And you automatically react from that place. And you set up a cycle, right? But if you can stop a moment and say, this is what is. How am I going to choose to experience this? How am I going to choose to be with this? How am I going to choose to be in this? How am I going to choose to move through this? Not always an easy thing. Not always an easy thing, but it is a powerful thing. It's an empowering thing. It is something that really tunes us back into the truth of our true nature and our being. It's a worthwhile thing. It is something that will create more value in your life and your experiences than anything that any strategy that you've tried. We've all tried. We all try it. We fall back into it, don't we? And if we can accept ourselves even when we fall back into it, that's another wonderful step that we can move us forward. Happiness can exist only in acceptance, according to George Orwell. Happiness can exist only in acceptance. Abraham Lincoln said, most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. What have you made up your mind? How have you made up your mind? Groucho Marx says, not events, have the power to make me happy or unhappy today. I can choose which it shall be. Yesterday is dead. Tomorrow hasn't arrived yet. I have just one day today, and I'm going to be happy in it. Great philosopher as well as a comedian, right? Yeah. So, I love this quote also, and I lost the reference to who said it. It didn't get printed off. Happiness is nothing more than good health and bad memory. A lot of our unhappiness does come from holding on to memories. And when we have an experience that we feel unhappy in, it's because we've triggered a memory in some way. And so part of our work in being happy is really letting go of and releasing much of our memories, much of our past. There was a study done at Duke University as a group on peace of mind and happiness and the factors that contribute to that. And I want to just quickly go a few of them. One is the absence of suspicion and resentment. Nursing a grudge has a major factor in unhappiness. 2, not living in the past contributes to happiness. An unwholesome preoccupation with old mistakes and failures leads to depression, either yours or someone else's for that matter. Not wasting time and energy finding conditions you can't change. Cooperate with life instead of trying to run away from it. Force yourself to stay involved with the living world. Resist the temptation to withdraw and become reclusive during periods of emotional stress. That's one of the strategies that we have is to run away. You know, it's the whole fight, flight, or flee. It doesn't often work. Sometimes it is necessary in real safety situations, but sometimes just simply learning to be present even in the midst of challenge or difficulty and conflict is one of the very things that can move us through it into an experience that is beyond what we had experienced before, and really a releasing and an overcoming. Number 5, refuse to indulge in self-pity when life hands you a raw deal. Accept the fact that nobody gets through life without some sorrow and misfortune. Nobody gets out without something, right? And then 6, cultivate an old-fashioned virtues, love, humor, compassion, and loyalty. 7, do not expect too much of yourself. When there's too wide a gap between self-expectation and your ability to meet the goals you've set, feelings of inadequacy are inevitable. So be compassionate, like our daily word said today, and start with being compassionate with, number 1, with yourself. And then 8, find something bigger than yourself to believe in. Self-centered, egotistical people score lowest in any test of measuring happiness. We are created in the image and after the likeness of this amazing creative power and principle that is always at work in our lives. And at the very essence of this creative power is our happiness. It is the truth of who and what we are. It's the truth of who and what we've come here to be and express. And all of the experiences that we're having today are for the purpose of showing us either love or a cry for love. Which are you choosing today, right here, right now? Let's reflect on that over this next millennium, lifetime, century, eon, whatever time is required or needed or necessary, because we all will and are waking up to it, even right now. Thank you for being the light of the world. And so it is. Let's move into our meditation time, and Charlie's going to share a song with us. And as we move into that comfortable place for our time of meditation, just allow your heart to expand and be open to that inner peace. If something comes up within your awareness that doesn't look like or feel like that, just bless it and say thank you. And be open to releasing it to a knowing, a feeling of acceptance. Breathing in, I accept. And breathing out, I release. Breathing in, I accept whatever thoughts are in my head. I know they're not who I am, they're just my thoughts. And I'm willing to release those that are not serving peace and happiness. Breathing in, I notice my feelings, and I accept whatever I'm feeling right now, and I'm willing to release whatever is not in harmony with my true nature and being, which is love and peace and happiness. And know that I have feelings. Many are just strategies to try and experience happiness. So I'm willing in this moment, here and now, to bless those and thank them for their attempts to bring happiness. And I'm willing to simply choose to release those strategies and be open to choosing in this moment peace, love, well-being, happiness. I know the mind is telling me maybe at times that I have to have certain conditions and I can't be happy until this or because of that. Just notice those. And just ask gently the question, is this truly serving me? Is it truly absolutely necessary? The mind may say yes, but is this the truth? Listening to the heart, breathe into a knowing and a feeling. A choice. I choose happiness, even though blank. You get to fill in the blank. Take a moment now in the quiet of your being to choose. In my inner world, peace I find on every corner. In my inner world, peace I find on every bus stop, every home, every thought, every feeling, every memory, every projection into the future. I return to this choice. Thank you, Blessed Spirit, for reminding me of my choice. In every home I visit in, every step I take, every place I go, every face I see. Take a nice deep breath now. give thanks for the knowing of the ability to shift and to make choices. Take another nice deep breath. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. Allow yourself to be present here and now in the presence of love. Take another nice deep breath. Let your eyes gently come open and look around with the eyes that choose to see. And so it is. Amen.